Welcome to the Kahler Podcast, episode number 2 from Las Vegas, Nevada. How you doing today, Gary?
Hey, we're doing good. We're doing good.
For episode 2, what we're going to talk about is the Steeler, the lineage, everything else. We're going to show you some features and benefits. We're going to prove it. We're going to do all kinds of other stuff. But first, we're going to go through some comments from the last podcast. This is the quickest way for you to get an answer from us, is to leave something in the comments. You ready, Gary?
I'm ready. What are they?
Oh, boy, I tell you, I've seen a few of them. They're pretty good. I have not told Gary any of these things, so we're going to get a genuine reaction.
Yeah, well, thank you very much.
Yeah, you're so welcome. Okay, hey, the first one. God, this is a softball I'm lobbing to you. This is amazing. The channel is back. I've been living in obscurity for more than 20 years about anything Kahler after buying a 2300 off eBay when overseas shipping to France was cheap. Wow, that's amazing. France. But those past few months, infos have been pouring. The Facebook group is very helpful. Moshi, our sales manager, takes care of that.
Yep.
Great job, Moshi and Ed. I prefer Eddie, but thank you. That's nice. Appreciating your move for the passion, by the way. We need to know as much as you want to say. Golf clubs, the grandfather, the welder, the machines, the people, the stories about Rico, Neil, more machining, and a massive lesson on brass and the matter in general, and maybe bring out the secret weapon too.
Well, what's the question?
I think he's just saying that he's very happy we're doing this.
Well, that's good.
Yeah, us players need to be schooled because you need smart people to buy one of these, the last intelligently made product. Nearly impossible to afford in Europe these days, but I'll keep spreading the word. Outstanding podcast. Let's talk a little bit about why is it so expensive to get this stuff anywhere but here?
Well, first of all, when we say expensive, it just simply it costs more to make it in the United States. And we got to pay people. Now, we said that on our first podcast.
Sure did.
And these are people who have been with the company 45 years plus, and there's a few of them still working with the company. And, of course, they've got children. Children have children, and now those children are having children. In any case, they got their own small tribes, and hell, they need to make money like everybody else, and everybody knows $20 an hour is kind of a minimum today on anything in a machine shop, and that can go to as much as 30, 40, or 50.
Now, we only have one distributor overseas, right? It's is it Warwick?
No, it's Warwick, yes.
Warwick. And what about like import duties, tariffs, things like that?
All that type of thing as far as Warwick's concerned. They are a wholesaler, so they've already covered all that. Now, but we also sell into Europe directly off our website.
All right. Now, one last thing, and that is we had somebody very upset about shipping not too terribly long ago. They wanted us to ship one screw to Australia, and we don't make one single red cent off of shipping, do we?
We make nothing off of shipping. Sometimes we lose money on it. And when we say that, it's an estimate. For instance, if we say $50, it might cost $55.
The important thing, I think, for everybody to know is that, if you're halfway across the globe and you want us to ship you one screw, we don't control how much it costs for the person to bring it to you.
What we don't want to give the impression that everybody's like this. They are not.
They are not.
That's like 1% of the people. Everybody's reasonable. And what we try to do on an overseas shipment is try to get $50. And we say that because it takes a lot of time, a lot of effort. We actually make no money on a $50 shipment whatsoever. But we do it as a service. So we'd like the people to say, hey, if you need a screw, do you need some fine tuners? You need this or that or so forth. And I think we'll come up with a little better program on that eventually.
It's definitely something that we're working on. Okay. Let's move on. Okay, let's see. This one's pretty easy. The vault of guitar music history is about to open. Boy, you don't know the half of it. This place is surrounded with history. It's amazing. We had an envelope fall on the floor the other day, and I was like, what in the world is this? I opened it up, and it was like the proofs for promo shots for Judas Priest. So let's see. Looking forward to more episodes. Admire Gary's ingenuity since Kahler's going direct to the customer. Oh, this is a good one. Since Kahler is going direct to the customer, I think marketing should be the most important aspect. I believe this was Kahler's weakest aspect because Floyd Rose's license, they flood the market with low prices. That's not actually Floyd Rose. That's the people licensing them to get a lot of players to use the Floyd Rose bridge. This in turn gets more exposure. So even though the licensed bridges are inferior to the OFR, the players segregate the Floyd Rose bridges into a hierarchy of quality and it sorts itself out. And you can read it yourself.
Now, well, all I want to say about that is that Floyd Rose can do whatever they want. This is a free world, and
Yes.
they decided to license, and well, that's passed. And that's how it is. Now,
Yes.
as far as our marketing is concerned, up until 2013, we depended on all OEMs to do our marketing. So, yes, we didn't do in-user marketing until we moved here in 2013 to Vegas. It's time for us to be talking to the end user.
Absolutely. And that is also why I'm here. We've got such a facility. We basically combined what I do with what Kahler is, and we are going to give you guys so much information on this product. We're gonna do an overcorrection that's just huge. Let's see. Quick one. Love the stories and the details about Kahler's history. Can't wait for more. This is something that Gary thought nobody was going to care about.
I just don't think that's that important. But I want to thank all the people that we had many people. I can't believe it. Hundreds of people making comments about, oh, I didn't know you come from a farm.
Yeah.
You know, and watched airplanes go over and wish I was on them. The fact is, we all have different beginnings, and that's wonderful. That's why we live in the United States of America. That's why we got to keep our American people working. They deserve to make a living, and we can't help it that economics is what it is today. That's how it is. We all of us in the country, all have that problem.
Now, I can tell you this. I mean, we're doing everything that we can here. Both Gary and I work 7 days a week, and 12 hours is a short day.
We do work a lot of hours. There's no doubt about it, because we really care about the product.
This guy right here, I actually, I've done some things with this guy, the Tone Priest. Boy, this is, I'm curious to know the answer to this too. If Gary has any stories about the late, great Randy Coven, I would love to see that. Do you remember Randy Coven?
Yeah, I remember him, but unfortunately, I don't remember too many stories about him.
Well, I can tell you guys, if you want to know, I can tell you what I know about Randy Coven because I was quite a fan. And sadly, he is no longer with us. Randy Coven was an amazing bass player that went to Berkeley. He actually met Steve Vai and was in a band called Morning Thunder with Steve Vai at Berkeley.
Morning Thunder.
Morning Thunder. He was one of the very first people to have an album on Guitar Player magazine. They put out a label in the late 80s. Randy Coven was one of the very first people. Richie Kotzen was on it too, a couple other people.
Okay, so Randy was playing one of our bass bridges.
Yes.
The tremolo.
Yeah.
About what year was that?
About 89.
About 89.
About 88, 89. The Randy Coven's very first album was called Funk Me Tender.
Okay.
He's definitely one of your lesser known bass whammy players.
Yeah, okay. We got a couple of well-known bass players that play our tremolo.
Definitely.
Most well-known is...
I would say it's a toss-up between Les Claypool and Victor Wooten. They're both musicians.
Well, we certainly thank them for that because we've sold a hell of a lot of bass bridges, tremolos, both 4-string, 5, 6, 7, all the way up to an 8-string tremolo.
Wait a minute, didn't I see a 9-string bass trem in there?
Yeah, we can put the 9th one on there if you really want them.
If you're
that's all loaded with double springs set up and double this, double that. There's some custom work involved there, but we've sold a few of those.
There's a lot of these that are just great to see you, great this is happening. So we're not going to double up on those too terribly much. No. The next one is really, really cool, very, very important. At DP6117 says, thumbs up from one of the Daves. Good job, Eddie and Gary. That's Dave Petchalot.
Oh, my God, Dave Petchalot.
Dave Petchalot's going to be all over today's podcast,
well,
man.
I got to tell you, he's very special. He and, of course, Dave's story. Petchalot is, David is responsible for a lot of the R&D, particularly because he was the R&D department. And many of these pieces are the result of Dave's effort, my effort. But I want to make sure everybody understands it's a total effort by everybody to make things work.
One of the coolest things that I saw, and we'll probably do a cutaway and I'll show this, is this outrageous guitar that you said, I want something just so outrageous. And Dave Petchalot came up with tuners that work on hex keys.
That could have been one project that didn't go all the way through. But in any case, we have many, many projects that we worked on that didn't make it, let's say, to manufacturing.
The Van Halen song, Little Guitars, is based around the little guitar that Dave Petchalot made, sold to Eddie Van Halen. He loved it so much he wrote a song, named it after the guitar.
Okay.
Famous picture, Wolfgang Van Halen with this guitar that Dave Petchalot made. At user UL81Q3GP8P.
Oh, man, I remember that.
Yeah.
P8P. What's he say?
He says, I had guitars with Kahler, ... They suck!
Oh, really?
Hence why nobody put them on guitar. Okay, fuck. I'm sorry, Gary. Do you want me to shut the lights off for you? We'll just shut down the whole company right now.
No, what we'll do is watch our language a little bit on this. All I can say to that is everybody has their opinion, and we thank him for his opinion. And obviously we don't agree, but maybe we can help him out sometime if we knew more specifically what he's talking about.
Yeah, it would be good to be like, they suck because. Viewer comments are always fun, but it's time to get down to business. It's time to get down to brass tacks here. And what we're talking about, once again, is the Steeler reissues, but the Steeler was actually, I think, the last fulcrum that you guys designed. The first one was the 2500, and we're not even going to talk about that today, but then after that, you did two licenses, the Spider and the Killer.
That's right.
That's right. So the Spider, we'll talk about that later because that's getting reissued. The Killer, well, that's not getting issued because it was just so expensive to make. Correct?
That's right. It was very expensive to make. And matter of fact, I had more money in those Killers than what I was selling them for.
Yeah.
But it was a leading edge of technology at the time with a MIM and flowing really steel. And that technology was pretty good, but it wasn't good enough so that we could have it consistent. And that was the MIM project. However, we also used sintered metal. And that was some real innovative stuff that we did with sintered metal. Fortunately, very good friend of mine, Mr. Johnson, Dr. Johnson, that owns compacts.
That just got my inner seventh grader, Dr. Johnson.
Well, he is. He's the Dr. Johnson of metallurgy, a very, very highly respected man. And now his son, Junior, runs the company. Well, we were using different methods because I wanted to get as much mass in that block. So it was a sintered, what we call sintered steel block, which was impregnated with copper. That turned out to be extremely expensive. So we made a limited view of those. And I might give a shout out to Hartley Peavy because Hartley Peavy was the very first one of the OEM to use them.
Ironically enough, my guitar that has a Killer on it, because my goal is to own one of every guitar ever made ever, is a Peavy.
Is that a Vandenberg? Or?
No, actually, gosh, man, I wish that it was a Vandenberg. First gen Vandenberg with the Killer, man, I bet that thing's just amazing. And then with the Spider too, that's really cool.
I think they're doing a reissue of that Vandenberg, aren't they?
You are correct, and if I am correct, I believe they're putting a Floyd Rose 1000 on it, and they're making it in the Czech Republic.
That's their business, and
it is.
We got respect for other business. If they choose to do it, they do it, and there must be for good reason.
I personally would like to know that there's at least one Gen 3 Vandenberg that has the lineage, which would be Steeler. Yeah. So maybe we get one and we put a Steeler Pro on it or something.
Okay, we can do that if anybody's listening from PV.
So after you guys did the Spider and the Killer, you did two other fulcrum bridges. You did the Floyd Rose Pro, which was actually Floyd Rose product that you, Petulot, Floyd Rose, and his designer all got together and designed.
Well, everybody
right?
designed that. That was after a major thing that happened in the legal world. But we were then able to make the Floyd Rose Pro.
As far as I'm aware, you guys made two versions of the Steeler, the single locking and the double locking. Is there even any other version you can think of?
We didn't sell very many of those. All we did was put a different saddle set on that.
I have one right here. So as you can see, it looks like a regular old Steeler, but you can see those Diodario colored ball ends there. So yeah, it's single locking where the blocks would be the strings just come up and they sit on the edge of the saddle.
And that was a very expensive, by the way, to hollow that out and make that a tube and then cold head it in the back and all that business.
Well, I wanted to show these people real quick
All right.
that even though it's single locking,
Yeah.
this thing can still do all the things that you would want a double locking bridge to do. Check it out. I mean, just watch the vibration in the camera. So the other version of the Steeler would be the one that is actually double locking.
Now, that was under license originally with Floyd, like all the rest of the licenses. And we had gotten that license primarily because we were making for Fender. We made, I think, upwards somewhere between as many as 3,000 a month at one point in time.
Now, I got a carve-in when I bought this thing, and I bought it specifically for the Steeler. I found out that it had an Auto-Latch on it that was never disclosed. I bought it,
Oh, you got it
online.
over there. You show it.
I certainly do. Hold on. Now, as you can see, that looks an awful lot like a Floyd Rose. And you know what? You can make them behave similarly, but this thing has a couple other options that we're going to get into. It's just so you know the difference. And it's important to point out that they're just different. My favorite bridge of all time is the Steeler Professional with an Auto-Latch on it. Now, what we're going to do is a ring-off test, and we're going to compare a couple plates of famous bridges, but we're not going to say the name.
All we want to do is show the difference in the ring off between basically die-cast pieces and solid steel.
If you recognize it, you know exactly what it is, and if you don't, somebody will tell you.
The second piece we'll be doing a ring off on.
Yep, and that is another one that's really, really easy to identify.
And this is the third one.
That has been out of production since the late 80s.
So here we go on the first one.
Sounds zinky. Could be anything.
Could be anything. Now we'll try it against this one.
A little prettier.
Third one here.
That one sounds best so far, I think. All right, let's quit playing around.
Now we're going to go for the real deal here. This is solid steel, Rockwell hardened. It's all in integral substrate, so this is what it sounds like. This has an arc, that's a 14-inch, by the way, radius, but it's all integral to the piece. This is what determines the arch is this. Those are identical saddles. One happens to be a different color than the other, but the mass of that saddle is exactly the same. So we don't have a difference in mass from saddle to saddle, which will give you a better harmonic ring off.
Now, there is something really quick to point out. Two of those three plates there actually have the same kind of concept where their saddles are the same exact size, but if you look, you have progressive stamping on your plate, and they just built it into the mold.
Well, not necessarily on this one.
Well, no, this
all different size saddles go on this one.
That is the one. Now, that one right there, that one has same size saddles, but it's not progressively stamped. And then the other one, too. This one right here.
Yep.
Also.
Well, it has different heights throughout. Now, don't get me wrong, we appreciate our competitors, but we have to talk about the features and benefits of our own stuff. And we spend a lot more money, believe me. perfecting this plate here through a progressive stamp than we ever would making a die-cast frame. And I say that knowing because the Spider has the die-cast frame.
Yes, the Spider has the die-cast frame, and you were showing the Steeler Professional saddles, and there's a lot going in there. We've got what do we have with that? We've got it's mim and milling,
Okay.
right?
First of all, the intonator here is fully milled in our machine shop, and the back piece with the tube and the locking device comes out of MIM. That's a flow steel process. The reason on this saddle is a tube, because we want to keep the balls on here, because the back harmonic coming out of here is pretty dead, but it's there and it does make a difference.
This is why I brought up the Killer right here, is because this is a great bridge. I love this bridge. I love my guitar that I have one on. The thing performs great.
Yeah.
You can do all that fluttering and stuff like that too. Your whole idea with that was to not cut the balls off.
Well, we didn't want to cut the balls off. We improved it. We put bigger lockers on here, but this is a very unique, very heavy bridge. It's all of this stuff and the long stuff is a MIM process. This is sintering process from a company called Compax, and you can read steel right
Yes.
there. It's all steel. And it is engineered for the Auto-Latch. And then it was copper infiltrated and impregnated as well. And that's what makes it so heavy.
When you told me about that, putting a copper piece about the size of a penny on the thing,
yes,
it sounded so cool. Why don't you just describe what that is?
They can measure exactly how much copper they can put in this piece without distorting the piece. For instance, they know what the honeycomb is under a microscope, and they've already measured.
Explain what the honeycomb is. It's like, I think you described it to me as like holes in a sponge.
It is. It's like holes in a sponge. And you can impregnate it with different things. In this case, we impregnate it with pure copper.
So tell them what it's like to watch that copper go in.
They put it on a sintering going into a furnace, and it goes through the furnace, and you look through the glass and you see it, and all of a sudden, a snap of your finger, there's no ingot. It just sucked it up.
It just found its way into all those little voids. That will never be ever reissued again. But you know what, man? You find one. If you find one used, snatch it up, because they're great bridges and they perform as good as anything else.
We've seen them on eBay for as high as $400, $500.
For you to sell a brand new one today, it would probably be what, about double that?
$700, $800.
The thing is that with the Pro, we've got the lineage of the Killer, and you know what? As great as I've just been saying that bridge is, the Pro with the Auto-Latch, my favorite bridge ever.
Yep.
I was really concerned, too, that the mass was distributed in the wrong place for this thing, but I kept my mouth shut. Now it's just like, I'm just going to wait and see how it behaves. Boy, was I worried about nothing. This thing, it's just perfect.
Well, the other thing, we were trying to accomplish something a little bit different here with this piece. This being a substrate of pure steel, and then hardened to an RC, and the saddles all being balanced as far as their mass is concerned. We're trying to get a ring off of this that is even better controlled by your own electronics. We're giving you more dynamics with this so that you can control the outcome.
Show the difference between the professional and the traditional saddles. The only difference, this is the only difference between the Steeler Professional and the Steeler Traditional, is the saddle.
This is with the traditional, this little push goodie right here. You don't have to, I'll unscrew this a bit, and you can see this moves back and forth, and it does not fall out. And you don't bloody your finger, although you do cut the ball off. The fact is, there's a little guide, little notch right there. that little notch, you put the string in there, you take and push this up with your thumb and tighten this up in the back. This is the professional saddle. Comes in the back of the tube. We should have a string to show it, but we can show it on the guitar.
Definitely show it on the guitar.
And this little piece right here, the string will come in. That'll pop up when you unloosen that. Go straight over. Go ahead and tune up the string, tune up everything. And then when you think you got the in tuneness and you have your fine tuner set halfway, then go ahead and tighten this down. And now what you want to do is to hold this little lever down a little bit and then tighten it down with an Allen wrench.
Steel and brass are, they're not as wildly different tonally as, like, say, I don't know, steel and zinc or steel and aluminum or something like that.
Aluminum's completely different sound.
From my experience, steel's a little bit brighter than brass.
It's a warmer sound. It isn't as dynamic, I don't think, as steel is.
These bridges have been up for sale now for a week, along with a couple other things, and you can just go straight to the website. There will be a link in the website. Maybe I'll put a video card up right here so that you can just click on it, go buy a bridge, come back, finish watching the podcast. This is a big difference between the professional and the traditional. That right there, I have the fine tuner out as far as it can go so that you can see all the travel. Now I'm going to move this right here, and that's a pretty standard amount of travel. That's what we would expect on just about any double locking thing. That's the amount of play you have to fine tune where you're at. Professional, same exact thing. Fine tuner is all the way out of the equation. Look at how much travel this thing has. It's like, that looks like double or more to me. Of course, though, it all comes down to performance. At the end of the day, you can have all this great sounding stuff on paper, but how does it perform? And I'm here to tell you, this thing performs every bit as good, if not better, than anything I've ever used ever before in my life. My own personal opinion that you can take with a grain of salt, because I am currently sitting inside of Kahler, right across from Gary Kahler, but this is my favorite bridge ever, specifically when you put the Auto-Latch on it. My God, the Auto-Latch, greatest device I never knew I needed. Now, I want to bring this up real quick, because there are a lot of people that say, oh, the Kahler locking nut. Oh, the Kahler locking nut. What a problem the Kahler locking nut is. Well, guess what? That right there is not the Kahler locking nut. That right there is the Kahler string lock. Even that is not the Kahler locking nut. That's a String Lock Pro. Both of which are just fine and dandy, by the way, if you take the time to actually read the instructions, set them up right. That's the Kahler locking nut right there. Not only does it have a built-in string director, but every single string guide is a different height, width, and radius. It's time to talk about my favorite option for the block for the Steeler, and that is the Auto-Latch. We're not going to go into great depth into this thing right now, but I can tell you this, there's just a huge amount of history behind this thing. Obviously, Gary wanted that. You were the one who had the idea that I want you to be able to just, you've already got your hand on the bar. Well, that's what locks it.
Yeah. I think originally it was my idea. I said, why can't we lock a tremolo into a fixed bridge? Doesn't make sense that we don't do that. If you want perfect harmonics, you may have a wild 32 bars or whatever you're doing with your tremolo.
Yes.
And you're making spaghetti out of it. You're pulling up on it, almost breaking your E string, and you're going nuts with the thing. But then maybe the next song, it is a ballad of some kind, and you want to be absolutely in tuneness. Well, you simply put the arm down. It's locked in place, and the pros do it really quick. They can use the fine tuners and bring that up in tune, because anytime you use all these gymnastics on a tremolo, believe me, when it comes back to zero, it's not going to be in perfect in tuneness. But this way, you lock it off, and you got your little fine tuners, and just takes a moment to tune it back up, and you're ready to go with some really clear harmonic stuff. That's what I like about it.
Yeah. Now, probably the best example of what Frank Zappa called strat abuse
Yep.
was by Steve Vai. And something that's little known, and I'm sure I'll insert a slide here, is that in the stand-up video for David Lee Roth, that Ibanez gem, the Loch Ness green one that he's playing, does not have an Ibanez edge in it. It has a Kahler with an Auto-Latch.
Yep.
That right there, that's on from Steve Vai's website. So and you knew Steve.
Oh, I know Steve very well. We would meet back in Los Angeles, along with Bernie Rico and Jackson, my good friend Grover Jackson, and other folks, including Wayne Charvel and the Fender people.
Yeah.
In the beginning, we would have a meeting on a weekend in a big motel, and everybody would have their own room, and then we would go from room to room, and these pros like Stevie would visit our room, and he was a great guy to deal with. And then he got the contract with Ibanez, and he's been doing it great ever since. Of course, he pays Ibanez equipment, and I can understand that. And but he also has Kahlers as well.
Yeah.
And he did back then, and he made some suggestions at that point in time, I think, that were very good as well.
Just on a personal note, keeping it real short, I'm a big fan of Steve Vai, and I've met him 3 times, and all 3 times he was just the nicest guy in the world.
Yep.
If I even try to tell a short story, there's no way. Yeah, so anyway, the Auto-Latch, here's just how deep this goes. Now, we've already mentioned Dave Petchalot. He had a lot to do with it, as did the entire team at Kahler, but Dave Petchalot was telling me that he actually had some help from a real good friend of his named Joe Glazer. And if any of you have ever heard of a Plek machine, then you know that Joe Glazer is the guy that when a business buys a Plek machine, you get Joe Glazer too for about a week. He sets it up. He shows you how to use it. I don't know exactly what the involvement was.
Here again, I've got to say, it's a company that did development.
Yes.
It took a hell of a lot of money to develop it. To find that money and put that money into it administratively, and then to figure out how to tool it is even a bigger issue.
Yes.
And that's where Bill Garayan comes in, who has been my buddy for 45 years, ex-Navy dude and tool man.
Yeah.
And so if we can't tool it right so that we can make it at the right price and use the right substrate, well, then you don't have anything. And then, of course, it goes to sales after a pilot run, and now the salespeople have to sell it and speak about it. So it's a 3-legged stool again. Everybody's involved in it. In the case of the Auto-Latch, though, it took a long time.
Oh, yeah, what, 2 years? Or was it
at least
more?
2 years. That was a lot of money. I can show you 50 things that don't work. So, and one of these days we'll go into that cabinet. We'll bring it all out, and you can see all the steps we went through to finally get to it. And then after we got it all done, and I'm speaking to the attorneys about patents and so forth. Oh, no problem. That's so unique. We can patent it. Oh, really? Then we come out with it as a kind of a prototype. And would you believe it? We got a notification from an attorney say, well, that's covered in XYZ guy's patent. Although the man who had the patent had never made anything in his life. He's an engineer, and I imagine really good guy.
Sure.
And he had it, but he had the patent on it. And I just got to say that we stopped distributing it, making it, because I did not need any more lawsuits, and I didn't want to pay a fortune because the end user would just have to pay more. We stopped making them after about 6 months, and I really can thank Hartley Peaver, but particularly Mr. Anderson on Anderson Guitars.
Yeah, Tom Anderson.
Tom Anderson was great, and his whole staff was great, and they used them, and doggone it, I just had to stop producing them. I had a lawsuit on my hands or whatever, and I had over $70,000 worth of parts in stock at that time.
I don't say this to brag or anything like that, but the guitars you see behind Gary, I think all of them except one are his. One of them's mine. Everything that you see otherwise, that's all me, and I've got like everything over there and stuff like that. And I say this because I am a guitar nerd. I love this stuff, and here's the thing. I didn't find out that the Auto-Latch even existed until probably about 6-7 years ago. It's something nobody's heard about.
Well, they didn't hear about it because we stopped it.
My absolute favorite combination, the Steeler Pro with the Auto-Latch right there. And I think it's just so cool. I got this clear plate. You hear that kind of vibration when you lock it. It's just way better. So I'll play a little something with it locked, and anytime it's straight down like that, it's locked. If it's anywhere other than right there where it's flip-flopping around, and it's flip-flopping around because this works off a flat.
Yes, it does.
A lot like a key does. So where it's flat, you got wiggle, 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 and the second you engage it, well, obviously that's very stiff. It'll stay right where you want. And you can adjust the stiffness with the piece that is on the arm module.
Well, it's on that would be adjusting it with set screws that are compacting as springs. There's two springs in there that come right up against the flat part of that arm.
I'll kind of demonstrate when you want it fixed, or just when you don't want a trem. Then you just have it locked, and then you just move it, and all of a sudden, there you are again. So you can really dig into those notes and just beat the crap out of it. Oops. The thing is that if I were to do that with this floating the entire time, I wouldn't be able to dig in as much. This back here has now become kind of a counterweight on the fulcrum. So as you're beating on this thing, and if you're like me and you like a real light action, I only have 2 springs. So this thing's going to move all over the place. So subtle, but when you start noticing it, then all of a sudden you really want that stability back of having it fixed until you want it to float. That's my experience anyway. That's my opinion.
I think you're right about that. I think that you want to do whatever you want to do all the gymnastics on that you want to do, whatever that is. But there's going to be times when you want it in tune. And we all know that after you stretch the hell out of the strings or make spaghetti out of them,
yeah,
even if when the locking nut is locked, you got strings moving. I mean, the strings are simply going to stretch. and then you put it in the lock position. And if you got something coming up and another 8 bars, I don't know, whatever, 16, you can tune it up in the meantime very quickly with the fine tuners. At least you know where ground zero is. I think an important thing to say is that we've made this line of these different features of whatever that musician wants out there.
Man, I tell you what, we have only gotten about halfway through this thing, so I think we're running a little long, though. So we'll just shut it down right here, and I just want to thank you guys again for tuning in. Go ahead and let us know what it is you want to talk about in the comments. Thanks for stopping by, and we'll see you next week.